You would rather be an imaginary genius than a visible beginner. That is the disease, not ordinary laziness, not lack of ambition, not lack of dreams. The real disease is ego hiding behind inaction. Because in your imagination, you are already powerful. In your imagination, you are respected. In your imagination, you are disciplined, wealthy, focused, dangerous, and one serious decision away from shocking everyone who underestimated you. But reality asks for one small payment. Start. Publish the first ugly video. Send the first uncomfortable offer. Enter the gym before your body looks trained. Build the first sample before your skill looks impressive. Write the first page before your voice sounds sharp. Let the world see your current level before it becomes respectable. And suddenly, the ambitious man becomes tired. Suddenly, he needs more research. Suddenly, he needs a better plan. Suddenly, he needs the right mood. Suddenly, he needs motivation. Suddenly, he tells himself he is not ready. No, you do not fear work. You fear measurement. Because the moment you begin, the fantasy loses protection. While the dream lives only inside your mind, you can still feel exceptional. You can still believe you are different. You can still believe you are one decision away from greatness. You can still believe that if you really tried, you would shock everyone. That sentence is the drug. If I really tried. It lets a man feel superior without producing evidence. It lets him keep the identity of someone powerful without submitting to the humiliation of being a beginner. It lets him look at his empty hands and still tell himself there is a kingdom waiting inside him. But the world does not reward the man who could have been great. The world rewards the man who enters reality and leaves proof behind. Machiavelli understood something most weak men hate to admit. Men are not judged by their hidden potential. Men are judged by what appears in the world. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." That is a brutal sentence, because it means your private greatness has no authority. Your intentions do not command respect. Your imagined future does not feed you. Your hidden talent does not create power. Your pain does not automatically make you valuable. Your ambition does not become real because you feel it strongly at night. Power needs appearance. Power needs evidence. Power needs proof. And that is where the ambitious but inactive man begins to break. Because the beginner stage makes him look ordinary. When you begin, you are not impressive. You are clumsy. You are slow. You are awkward. You are uncertain. Your work is rough. Your voice is weak. Your offer is unclear. Your writing is average. Your body is not trained. Your first content gets ignored. Your first business attempt exposes how much you do not know. This is normal. But to the ego, it feels like death. Because the ego does not want growth. The ego wants status. It does not want to be trained. It wants to be recognized. It does not want correction. It wants admiration. It does not want the beginner stage. It wants the throne without the apprenticeship. So the ambitious lazy man makes a private bargain with himself. If he never starts, he never has to see his real level. If he never posts, he never has to see that no one cares yet. If he never sells, he never has to hear no. If he never trains, he never has to confront his weakness. If he never builds, he never has to discover that his imagination is ahead of his ability. This bargain feels safe, but it is poison, because it protects the fantasy while destroying the future. Psychology gives this a colder shape. Procrastination becomes more likely when the task feels unpleasant, when the reward feels far away, and when the person doubts his ability to perform well. In plain language, you delay the thing that would expose you. That is exactly what happens to the ambitious man who cannot move. The task feels unpleasant because it threatens identity. The reward feels far away because real mastery takes time. Confidence is low because deep down he knows he is not good yet. So avoidance becomes attractive, not because the dream is small, because the first step is humiliating. But procrastination is not only delay, it can become self-protection. Self-handicapping is the pattern where a person creates obstacles before performance, so failure can be blamed on the obstacle instead of ability. A man waits too long, prepares too much, starts too late, stays vague, and then says, "I did not really try." So his ego survives. He avoids full effort, then tells himself he could have done better if he had taken it seriously. He avoids the arena, then calls it strategy. He avoids judgment, then calls it patience. He avoids evidence, then calls it timing. But his future does not survive. That is why procrastination is not always a time problem. It is often an identity protection problem. The task is not just write the page. The task is prove whether you can write. The task is not just record the video. The task is prove whether anyone wants to listen. The task is not just send the offer. The task is prove whether the market cares. The task is not just go to the gym. The task is prove whether your body obeys you. That is why you avoid. The arena test exposes weakness. First video, first offer, first workout, first business attempt, first public output, first sales message, first portfolio, first week of real discipline. Each one reveals your level. And most men would rather protect the imaginary version than face the real one. The imaginary version is strong. The real beginner is awkward. The imaginary version is respected. The real beginner is ignored. The imaginary version is rich. The real beginner has no offer. The imaginary version is disciplined. The real beginner cannot keep 3 promises in a row. The imaginary version is powerful. The real beginner is still negotiating with his phone. So he hides. He calls it planning. He calls it thinking. He calls it waiting for the right time. He calls it studying. He calls it being strategic. But underneath, he is trying to avoid evidence. Now understand this carefully. Research and preparation are not bad. Learning is not bad. Planning is not bad. But when learning never becomes output, it becomes delay. When planning never touches reality, it becomes fantasy. When research exists only to postpone the first ugly attempt, it becomes fear with a notebook. A man can become addicted to the feeling of becoming without ever becoming. He does not need drugs. He has imagination. He has motivational content. He has revenge fantasies. He has saved posts. He has private superiority. He has plans that make him feel serious. And none of it leaves proof. The fantasy has already paid him emotionally, so reality never receives his effort. This is why some men watch content about discipline, dominance, money, power, and solitude for months. But their life does not move. They feel activated. They feel chosen. They feel different. They feel understood. Then they go back to the same habits, because the content gave them the feeling of transformation without forcing the cost of transformation. If you are serious, listen carefully. If you are watching a lot, thinking a lot, saving a lot, and still not producing proof, you are not building power. You are consuming the emotion of power. And if you continue like that, your ambition will become entertainment, your pain will become identity, your potential will become a private story you tell yourself while life passes you by. Inside my Patreon, I go deeper into the unfiltered lessons that do not belong in public content. Power, self-discipline, human nature, status, strategy, and the psychology of becoming impossible to ignore, not for everyone. Only for men who are done watching themselves delay. The decision is yours. Power is not in begging a man to change. Power is in making him see the cost of staying the same. The cure is not to dream less. The cure is to make the dream pay rent in reality. Your dream must produce receipts, a finished draft, a published video, a sent offer, a tracked workout, a completed sample, a rejected message, a lesson applied, a skill practiced, a dollar saved, a portfolio updated. If there is no receipt, the dream is still theater. Look at Alex Hormozi. Before the audience, before the books, before the massive online brand, before the authority people recognize today, he entered the gym business and let reality test him. Public accounts of his early story describe him leaving a stable path, opening gyms, facing pressure, dealing with failed partnerships, sleeping on a gym floor, selling, marketing, making offers, and learning through direct market judgment. The point is not to worship another man's outcome. The point is to study the exposure phase. He did not become powerful by protecting the fantasy of being a businessman. He became powerful by letting the market measure him. Real bills, real customers, real rejection, real offers, real consequences. That is the part most ambitious men avoid. They want the later authority without the early exposure. They want the respect without the awkward sales calls. They want the money without the first rejected offer. They want the identity without the measurement. But power begins when the image is no longer protected. Look at Sarah Blakely. Before Spanx became known, she worked ordinary jobs, sold fax machines door to door, faced rejection, and had no guaranteed path into fashion or entrepreneurship. Her early pressure was not glamorous. It was ordinary work, direct selling, silence, dismissal, and repeated no. But she learned something most people never learn. Rejection is not an insult when you know how to use it. Rejection is information. Rejection is training. Rejection is a commercial weapon when the person receiving it refuses to collapse. Her first proof was not a billion-dollar company. Her first proof was willingness. Willingness to sell. Willingness to hear no. Willingness to test an idea against reality. Willingness to continue when the market did not immediately applaud. That is what separates imagined ambition from trained ambition. Imagined ambition wants certainty before action. Trained ambition gets evidence through action. Imagined ambition says, I need confidence first. Trained ambition says, I need contact with reality first. Because confidence does not come before evidence. Confidence follows evidence. A man who waits to feel confident before entering the arena will wait forever. The arena does not give confidence to men who imagine victory. The arena gives confidence to men who return after embarrassment. That is the test. Can you be bad and continue? Can you be ignored and continue? Can you be corrected and continue? Can you look ordinary and continue? Can you start at the bottom without pretending you are above it? If yes, you can build. If no, your ambition is still a costume. This is why the beginner stage is not beneath you. It is the gate. You do not pass through the gate by feeling ready. You pass through the gate by becoming measurable. If your first video is bad, good. Now you have something to improve. If your first offer is ignored, good. Now you have market data. If your first workout exposes weakness, good. Now you know where the body begins. If your first writing is rough, good. Now you have a draft to sharpen. If your first attempt embarrasses you, good. Now the fantasy has been damaged, and the damaged fantasy makes room for proof. This is the transformation. A man becomes dangerous only after surviving the embarrassment of being bad, not before. Before that, he's only imagined power. After that, he becomes trained power. There is a difference. Imagined power is loud inside the mind. Trained power leaves evidence. Imagined power needs people to see potential. Trained power gives people proof. Imagined power says, I could. Trained power says, I did, and here is what I learned. Imagined power avoids judgment. Trained power uses judgment as material. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand." In other words, people do not live inside your intentions. They see your visible reality. They judge what appears. They respond to proof. They respect power once it takes form. You may hate that. Good. That hatred is useful if it forces you to stop hiding, because the world is not designed to honor your private potential. The world is designed to respond to pressure, proof, leverage, evidence, and visible outcomes. A weak man hears that and complains. A serious man hears that and adapts. He stops asking the world to understand him. He stops waiting for people to validate what he has not built. He stops expecting family, friends, society, or strangers to bow before a future they cannot see. He becomes undeniable, not by explaining himself, by producing proof so consistently that explanation becomes unnecessary. So here is what you must do. Choose one arena, not 5. 1. Content, sales, fitness, writing, business, a portfolio, a skill, a service. Choose the arena where your ambition keeps hiding, not the arena that sounds impressive, not the arena that gives you the best fantasy, not the arena you mention when you want people to think you are serious. Choose the arena where reality has been waiting for you. Then create the first ugly proof. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not after 10 more videos, not after 1 more book, not after 1 more perfect plan. Now, if it is content, record the first rough video. If it is sales, write and send the first offer. If it is fitness, log the first real workout. If it is writing, finish the first page. If it is business, create the first simple offer and show it to the market. If it is a skill, make the first sample. Then do not dramatize the result. Study it. Where was it weak? What was unclear? What made you hesitate? What feedback came back? What did silence teach? What needs one upgrade? That is how you leave fantasy, not through confidence, through contact with reality. The lazy, ambitious man wants confidence first. The dangerous man gets evidence first. The lazy, ambitious man wants to feel ready. The dangerous man wants to become corrected. The lazy, ambitious man wants applause before action. The dangerous man acts without applause until applause becomes irrelevant. Now, do not misunderstand. This is not permission to be careless forever. The first version can be ugly. The 10th version should be sharper. The 30th version should show discipline. The 100th version should carry evidence of war. Humiliation tolerance is not worshipping mediocrity. It is surviving the early phase long enough to improve. You are not supposed to stay bad. You are supposed to become measurable, then correct what measurement reveals. That is power. Measurement creates truth. Truth creates correction. Correction creates skill. Skill creates proof. Proof creates trust. Trust creates money, status, freedom, influence, and leverage. But the chain begins with measurement. And measurement begins when you stop hiding. So stop asking whether you are gifted. Start asking whether you have receipts. Stop asking whether you are special. Start asking whether you can produce. Stop asking whether you are ready. Start asking what must be built today. The world does not care how powerful you feel in private. It cares what you can prove in public or in the market. And if you hate that, good. That hatred is the ego losing its hiding place. Let it lose. Because the imaginary genius must die for the visible beginner to be born. And the visible beginner, if he survives long enough, becomes the dangerous man. This is the part most men refuse to understand. They say they want power, but they want it without exposure. They say they want respect, but they avoid the work that would make them respectable. They say they want freedom, but they cannot keep one promise to themselves. They say they want to be dangerous, but they run from the first situation that makes them feel small. Power is not a mood. Power is not a fantasy. Power is not the emotional high you get after watching a video at night. Power is the ability to impose your will on reality through repeated action, correction, and proof. If your life has no proof, your philosophy is decoration. If your ambition has no receipts, your ambition is theater. If your discipline only exists when you feel inspired, it is not discipline, it is weather. And a man ruled by weather cannot build an empire. If you are serious about changing, then understand the problem clearly. You are not losing because you lack information. You are losing because you keep using information to delay exposure. You already know enough to begin badly. That is the sentence that ruins the excuse. You already know enough to begin badly. You do not know enough to dominate. You do not know enough to win at the highest level. You do not know enough to build the final version, but you know enough to create the first proof, and that is all the gate requires. If you want deeper, unfiltered work on power, discipline, human nature, and the psychology of becoming undeniable, join my Patreon. If you are serious, you already know the pattern. You watch a lot, you think a lot, you feel the truth. But feeling truth is not the same as obeying it. If you continue consuming without producing, your ambition becomes another form of comfort. Inside Patreon, the content is built for men who want pressure, not entertainment. Men who want strategy, not soothing. Men who are done being impressive only in private. The decision is yours. No one is coming to force you into the arena. And that is exactly why the arena matters. A man's real character is revealed when there is no applause, no permission, no guarantee, and no audience begging him to continue. Can he still act? Can he still build? Can he still return? Can he still face the ugly proof and improve it? That is the entrance fee. The beginner stage is not beneath you. It is the gate. Enter it without applause. Because applause is not the beginning of power, proof is. And proof begins the moment you stop protecting the imaginary genius and allow the visible beginner to exist. That visible beginner will be awkward. Let him be awkward, he will be ignored. Let him be ignored, he will be corrected. Let him be corrected, he will be underestimated. Let him be underestimated, he will look ordinary. Let him look ordinary. Because ordinary is not the enemy. Hiding is the enemy. Being bad is not the enemy. Refusing measurement is the enemy. Refusing measurement is the enemy. Needing to look superior before you begin is the enemy. The man who cannot tolerate being bad will never become great. The man who cannot tolerate correction will never become sharp. The man who cannot tolerate rejection will never become useful to the market. The man who cannot tolerate silence will always be controlled by applause. The man who cannot tolerate the beginner stage will remain trapped in the fantasy of potential. And potential is one of the most dangerous prisons in the world. Because it feels like power before power exists. It gives you pride without evidence. It gives you identity without sacrifice. It gives you emotional status without public proof. It allows you to say, I am meant for more, while doing nothing that more requires. Kill that, not with hatred for yourself, with proof. One arena, one ugly action, one measurable result, one correction, then again, then again, then again. That is how the fantasy dies. That is how the beginner becomes trained. That is how the man who was waiting for permission becomes the man who no longer needs it. You would rather be an imaginary genius than a visible beginner. That is the disease. The cure is proof. The beginner stage is not beneath you, it is the gate. Enter it without applause.